Sumayyah.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tamassaka bi sunnatihi ila yawm ad-din. Amma ba'd, I commence in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I send salutations of prayers and peace upon the finality of prophets and messengers, Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, upon his family, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his companions, and all who follow him in righteousness until the day of judgment. As far as my story is concerned, short version, right? I'm Puerto Rican. I was born to a family that was religious as far as my grandmother was concerned. My grandmother was Pentecostal. My grandmother and grandfather, they were the first migrants to this country from Puerto Rico, and they were the ones who kind of aided the rest of my family to come here. As part of our culture, the Latino culture, is that, especially with the older generations, that the grandchildren are usually raised by the grandparents, or usually spend a lot of time with the grandparents. So because of that, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and my grandfather. And then when my grandmother and grandfather got divorced, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. So much so that she was the one that used to take me to church on Sundays. She was the one that taught me how to speak Spanish by reading the Bible in Spanish and things of this nature. So my journey that way, being religious and going to church, well, not really religious to that extent because I was still a child. I was being told to go to church, right? So probably until I hit about 7th grade, 7th grade, let's say, everything changed in middle school, right? When you hit middle school, everything changes. So when I hit middle school, it was at that point, of course, I was a fanatic with baseball. I played baseball from when I was 3 years old. My grandfather, he put a bat and a ball in my hand, and it was baseball. That was my life. Every minute I can think of, it was with baseball. And until I got till about middle school, and then that began to change. When I got to middle school, then I was introduced to partying, drinking, drugs, selling drugs, you name it, I probably did it, right? So around that point in life, I began to deviate from the path that I was raised upon, because my grandmother and my aunt, they were always taking me to church and kept us in the church. Me and all my cousins, actually. It was our whole tribe. We were all stuck in church with them, right? So when we all hit that age level, we started to drive away. And at that point, I moved in with my father, because my mother and my father, they had split as well, and I went to live with my father. So when I went to live with my father, now naturally, being in relationships was something more appealing to me. Being out partying with friends definitely was something more appealing to me. To the point where it began to get out of control, especially when I hit high school. When I hit 9th grade, it was out of control. By the time I hit 9th grade, you know, my father, by this point, he already knew that we were indulging in alcohol. You know, I remember coming home the first time, and I fell asleep in the bathroom on the toilet. And 4 o'clock in the morning, he used to go to work at 4 o'clock in the morning, so he's knocking on the door. What are you doing in there? You know, and I woke up and I'm like, okay, remember, I'm in the bathroom. So I exit the bathroom, and my little brother, he was maybe 1 at the time. He's in the crib jumping around, and I'm drunk. I jump in the crib with him. They're laying in the crib, so my father comes out, and my father's like, okay, what's wrong with this kid? Is he, you know, playing with his brother at 4 o'clock in the morning? Yeah, right. So he comes over, tries to find out what's going on, and he finds out that I was intoxicated, right? So the next day, you know, he went through my clothes after a long conversation of, you know, what did you do? And me, nothing, I didn't do anything. I'm not, you know, what did you take? Tell me what you took. I didn't take anything. And my grandmother comes downstairs, what did the boy do? And no, he's okay. You know, he doesn't want to let my grandmother know what's going on. And he searched through my pocket, and I had a bottle cap of St. Ives. That's what we used to drink. So he put it on the kitchen table. He left it on the kitchen table so I can see it in the morning when I wake up. So I woke up in the morning and I come downstairs because I totally forgot that I jumped in the crib, and he took me upstairs. I seen the cap of St. Ives on the table, and I said, okay, that's it, I'm done. All right, I'm in 9th grade, I'm finished. But my father, he always had different wisdom. He sat me down, and he basically gave me a long speech of what life is about, and life is about choices, and you make choices, and everything in life has cause and effect. He didn't beat me, he didn't do anything like this. Unfortunately, the lecture itself, the lecture that he gave me, didn't do much for me. So I continued partying and drinking all the way till I got to about, I continued partying to drink until I was about 19, 20, right? But it became worse my junior year of high school. My junior year of high school, I told my father, I said, I don't want to be in high school anymore. I'm dropping out. My mother was like, you crazy, I'm never going to sign you out. I told my father, you're going to sign me out or else I'm never going to go and they're going to kick me out. And my father said, okay, I'll sign you out, no problem. And then my mother's looking at him like, you nuts? My father said, no, we're going to sign him out. So my father signed me out of school. So I'm sleeping in the bed. The next day, about 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, life is great. I get to now relax, no more school, hang out. And the phone rings. And it's my father. So I pick it up, hello? He says, you up? I said, no, I'm sleeping. And he says, well, wake up. I said, what I gotta wake up for? No, I don't have anywhere to go. He said, I got you a job. So he said, either you're gonna work or you're gonna get out. This is what being a man is about. So me, I was always a knucklehead. Probably still am, all right? So I told him, I said, okay, I'm gonna prove to my father that I can do this. I can work. And I'll never forget that I went to work with him. He's a sanitation truck driver. And I worked maybe about a week, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, working till about 2, 3 in the afternoon, hauling trash. And then I remember I got home one day, tired, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, fell asleep. I woke up at 6. I see, we usually leave for work at 3 o'clock in the morning. I run downstairs, my father's painting the wall. I tell him, what are you doing? We gotta go to work. He says, what are you talking about? I said, now I wanna work, and you wanna stay home today. What are you talking about? Let's go. He said, go look at the time. It was 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Right, so he was wearing me out good, subhanAllah. So this continued in my house, and I continued partying, drinking, and doing everything else. In my house on the weekends, we would fill up garbage cans, literally, of alcohol, subhanAllah. And this continued until one day my mother, she used to raise foster children. Her, my grandmother, my aunt, they all raised foster children. And they had a foster child who came to my mother's house by the name of Edgar. His mother had died of HIV. His father was in prison most of his life. And me and him clicked relatively quick. And he was the one who said to me, he said, listen, there's an organization in New York by the name of Zulu Nation. We should go check them out. They talk about a lot of government conspiracies and about this and about that. So I told them, okay, let's go check it out. But I still was walking a path that, subhanAllah, was a treacherous path. Before getting to that path, I probably crashed my car 2 times, drunk, almost killed myself. Many other things happened in the path, in that path that I could have died in. So much so that even one time prior to going into the actual scenario, my mother had kicked me out of my house. And I went to my father, and I told him, because I had moved back with my mother at this point. I went to my father and said, Mom kicked me out. So my father said, okay, come on, get in the car with me, let's go. We gotta go for a ride. He drove me to the nearest park by his house. He parked the car. He took $50 out of his pocket. He put the $50 on the dashboard, and he said, you can't come home. What are you talking? Mom kicked me out. Where am I going to go? He said, you're uncontrollable. He said, you're going to have to find a room where you can rent somewhere to go, but this is the max that I can help you right now. He said, get out. And I stepped out the car thinking, nah, he's not going to drive away. And he drove away. And I said, subhanAllah, I think about it now. I said, I can't imagine as a father how tough it was for him. I didn't have cell phones, right? I didn't have the latest iPhone and latest communication device to be able for him to check up on me. He left me there. I stood outside of the home for 6 months. First week sleeping here and there, friends letting me into their basements when their parents go to sleep. And then after a while, I found a place to live with a friend of mine in the basement, but unfortunately he had a pit bull. So the pit bull, when he was in the home, the pit bull was cool, good. When he walked out the gate and tried to go back in, I forgot my wallet, the dog stuck, right? So whenever he wasn't home, I couldn't get in the house. So I had to go through this for 6 months, subhanAllah. So when I met this young man, Edgar, he took me to New York to meet Africa Bambaataa and be a part of this Zulu Nation, see the meetings, and they used to have it in the Spanish Harlem. Here, at one of the meetings, a man by the name of Abdulaziz, he had came home from prison. And he was from Puerto Rico as well, and he had accepted Islam in jail. So he was one of the higher ranking officers, as they claimed, in the gang. He used to run one of the sects that they had, or one of the neighborhoods that they had. So when he came home, he had basically stepped away from it, but he asked Africa Bambaataa, can I give a lecture? So Africa Bambaataa, like he was accustomed to when he used to open up his meetings, he would say, we're gonna pray. So he said, well, the Muslims. Muslim brothers stand up, they say face east, everybody face east, and then make prayer. Where the Christian will stand up, and he'll go ahead and raise his hands, he'll make prayer. Buddhist, until everybody made prayer. So he said, yeah, go ahead, take the floor, no problem. So Abdulaziz spoke about the concept of Tawheed, the oneness of God. He spoke about homosexuality, he spoke about a whole bunch of things. And my friend Edgar, he used to be underneath him. He was in charge, and Edgar was one of the running guys for him. So when he seen Edgar, he immediately came and embraced him. He said, I haven't seen you in such a long time. Where you've been? What's going on? He said, I live in New Jersey now. This brother here, he said my name. He said, I live with his mother. They're taking care of me, this and this and that. So he says, do you mind? Do you want to take me home? I live in the Bronx. So I said, all right, let's take him home. So when we took him home, he invited us up to his house. When we went up to his house, he offered us some tea, some cookies, and he immediately began to talk to us about Islam, particularly Tawheed, the oneness of God. And I found it interesting because when I strayed away from religion, one of the reasons that I strayed to and never went back to to the church and practice going to the church and practice going to Sunday school and things of this nature was because I had a problem with the concept of Jesus being God. I had a hard time accepting it. So even though anytime I prayed, I used to say, oh God, help me. Oh God, give me this. Oh God, give me that. So when he began to tell me that God was one, that God was the creator of the heavens and the earth, that God had no father, God had no son, God had no daughter, God had no family members. God wasn't created, but God is the creator of everything. I said, this is what I believe. This is the concept that I believe in. But because I was a knucklehead, I said I still have to go ahead and do some more research. Plus, I said I'm not just going to leave the religion of my family without researching it and getting some more evidence. So he gave us a book by Bilal Phillips, which was my first book in Islam, Tawheed, the oneness of God by Bilal Phillips. So me, my friend Edgar, and another friend Tony, the three of us were together that day. So we went back home, and we had what was called the cipher, right? In Jahiliyyah, we would have ciphers, little circle, and we would smoke weed together, we'd drink like this. So we said, let's build a cipher, and we drinking and talking, and we began to talk about religion. So my friend Tony, he had went to prison once as well, and he had a book on Islam as well. And when we began to talk, we brought out books. We went and actually picked up books on the Nation of Islam. We picked up a book called Niggas to Gods, right? It's a strange book, right? From Niggas to Gods. Picked up different books by the Nation. We got a Bible, and we said, okay, the three of us are going to sit here, and we're going to compare all of these faiths and see what they're calling to. And we began to read. We started with the Nation, and we began to read about the mothership. And when we began to read about the mothership, my friend Tony, he loved math. And it was talking about how the mothership was going to be of a spherical shape, and it was a mile long by a mile wide, and it was going to have so many hundreds of ships in it. And he's doing the math in his head, and he was like, hold on, it's impossible. It's not going to fit. The calculations are wrong, right? So he said, toss that one. There's no way, that can't be correct. So, and then after that, we went to the book From Niggas to Gods and Righteous Teachings and began to read that. And then we went into Christianity. And the whole way through, my friend Tony kept saying, we have to follow the religion that is Muhammad calls to. And I'm like, okay, how you know? You like us. He said, I'm telling you, that's the one. So me personally, I ended up going back and reading the Bible from cover to cover. And as I read the Bible, I would highlight verses that I found to be contradictory or problematic. And I would go to my family, because my family, they were religious. My uncles were priests, pastors. My grandfather was a pastor. Well, my grandfather had passed away by this time. So I would go and I would say, listen, well, what about this verse? And this verse says that we shouldn't practice Christmas. This verse says you should be covering. this verse says that we shouldn't be eating pork, and we love pork. That's all we eat. Why are we doing this, right? And my grandmother would say, oh, the laws changed when Jesus came. And then I was like, but hold on, but Jesus said I didn't come to change the laws of Moses. So what are you talking about? And she says, oh, don't worry about it. You're learning something crazy. So I began to do more investigation. I began to go to debates between Muslims and Christians. And it was at one of these debates that kind of clinched it for me. The priest, he got up there and he was talking about Jesus, and he said, Jesus is the Son of God, and he is the one and only God. I was too shy to ask a question though. You know, there was a lot of people there. I didn't want to ask any questions. I didn't want to seem like a dummy or whatever have you. So I said, I'm going to wait till afterwards, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to approach him. I'm going to ask him a question. So when the lecture finished, I went up to him. I said, can I ask you a question? He said, certainly. I said, you made a statement during your lecture. You said, Jesus is the Son of God and he's the one and only God. He said, absolutely. I said, I only got one question for you, and I need it solved. I said, in the Bible, it says that Jesus was placed on the cross, and that Jesus said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? I said, so this is my question. I said, I have the God who Jesus was crying to, saying, my God, and I have your God, Jesus. So who should I pray to? He looked at me, baffled, confused, and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, son, you just have to believe. And I looked at him, I said, are you crazy? I said, God has given me a mind. He's given a scripture. In the scripture is showing me that Jesus is praying to somebody. So why am I just going to believe in something that the scripture is telling me otherwise? So it was at that point that I said, I'm going to be a Muslim. So and during this whole time, we're still going to the nation, the Zulu Nation meetings, going back and forth. So we went back to Abdulaziz and told him, look, we're ready to become Muslim. So he said, okay. He went to give us our Shahada, even though I was still a little reluctant. And when he went to give us a Shahada, I paused him. I said, hold on. I said, I got one condition though. He said, what's that? I said that I'm a man, I do as I like, when I like, and how I like to do it. I said, don't tell me what I can do and what I can't do. I'm going to continue being me, but I'll accept your faith. He said, that's fine. So he gave me the Shahada, and I said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and I accepted Islam. The three of us, actually, me, my friend Edgar, and my friend Tony, and we were all from Puerto Rico. After that, we used to go back and forth to him, to learn from him. And we still were going to the Zulu Nation meetings, because I found it interesting. He spoke about a lot of government conspiracies that I see coming true now, subhanAllah. But it came to a point where he said to us, he said, listen, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. You can't be participating with Zulu Nation that has corrupt principles and then be a Muslim that's calling to piety and righteousness. The two don't mix. You have to choose one. So we said, okay, we choose Islam. So he said, okay, don't come back to New York anymore. And I appreciate this from him now, because I realize now that he had many shortcomings that he didn't want us to see as new Muslims. So he said, go to your local mosque, call me and tell me what they're teaching you, and I'll tell you whether to stay there or not. So we went to the local mosque, and when we got to the parking lot, we all looked at each other and we was like, you want to go in? Like, nah. We drove away, too nervous. That happened 3 times. On the 3rd time, we entered. And when we entered, it was a Palestinian mosque, and everybody started to say, Assalamu alaikum. I'm like, what's this guy talking about? Right? I'm a new Muslim, I didn't know anything. And then, Kayf haluk? Min aina anta? He's talking with all these Arabic words, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay. I'm like, yeah, hi. And we go into the mosque and we sit down, and the Imam, he gets up and he starts to speak in Arabic. It was a class that night. He starts to speak in Arabic, and I'm sitting here like, oh my God, what did we do? We accepted the faith. I can't understand the man. How are we going to understand this religion? So we ended up leaving, and we came back after that. And one of the times when we came back, I actually met in the hallway 2 brothers, and when I seen them, they had baggy pants on, a sweat hood on, and I was like, all right, they come from the hood, I gotta talk to them. So I went over, I was like, listen, can I talk to you? They were like, yeah, Assalamu alaikum. I'm like, wa alaikum salam. I was like, where you from? They're like, downtown Patterson. So I was like, listen, man, you know, I'm a new Muslim. I'm from Puerto Rico. They were like, oh, I'm from Guatemala. I was like, ah, even better. You know? So then they told me that there was an American mosque a few miles down the road that I probably would feel more comfortable at. And I ended up going to that mosque, and that ended up being the mosque that I declared to be my home, where I went and I learned about Islam and I studied Islam there, and this is where I went and I prayed. And that continued until about 2001. I accepted Islam in the end of 97, entering 98. In 2001, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed me to be able to go to the University of Medina. I got accepted to be a student at the University of Medina, so I accepted the invitation, and I went August of 2001. September 11th happened. Part of the contract that you make with the people in charge in Medina is that you can't bring your family with you. So my family was here in Jersey, I was in Medina. When 9/11 happened, I remember like it was yesterday. We had one student, he ran into the classroom and he said, they bombed the towers, the Twin Towers in New York. Everybody was like, get out of here. What, you liar, right? Because we didn't have TVs, we didn't have anything on campus. And then the internet was so slow, it would take about 20 minutes just to change from one page to the next. So we waited till after school, we all went to McDonald's. McDonald's was our TV. So we went to McDonald's, we put it on CNN, and we seen that the Twin Towers were hit by the planes. So now all of the American students, we're freaking out. We're like, okay, all of, especially the ones that were from Jersey, New York, and stuff like that. We're like, our families are there. What's going on? What's happening? So I called my wife. She told me everything was okay, everything was fine. She tried to keep me as calm as possible so that, look, continue studying, don't worry about it. But in the back of my mind, it was always a problem for me, because I knew I wasn't there to protect them, or I wasn't there to be there for them. And she was a new Muslim as well, and she was living with her family who were not Muslims. So I had a fear that maybe her family would kind of say, listen, look, this is the religion you accepted, and that she would get shaken and probably leave the faith. So afterwards, I stood in Medina for those 6 months because I couldn't leave. After those 6 months were done, I basically told them, look, let me go home, check on my family, and I'll come back. We have a break. And they said, no. Part of the rules is that you can't leave, you have to wait till June. I said, listen, I'll pay for my ticket, I'll pay for my own traveling fees, I'll do everything. You don't have to worry about anything but stamp my passport. And they said, no. So I said, okay, so then you give me no choice. I'm not gonna choose my family over education. I have to leave. So I left. And then after leaving, it was one of the most painful times for me as a Muslim. Because when you're living in that Muslim country, 5 times a day, the adhan for prayer goes off. The call to prayer goes off. No matter where I was, I had a mosque to pray in. If I was in the mall, they had a mosque in the mall. If I was in the supermarket, there was a mosque down the street or a mosque across the street. SubhanAllah, that even one time, and I always tell the story, I was in the supermarket and the lights started to go off, but it was only about 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It was early still. And this little man, he's running up and down the aisles and he's saying, Salah, 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 prayer, prayer, prayer. And they closed the place down. So I walk out with the guy and I see the whole city. It was just like, it was my first experience to look and see the whole city leaving to the mosque. And when you get to the mosque, you're standing next to the guy who has the McDonald's outfit on. The guy over here is from Burger King. You know, the guy over there, he has the supermarket outfit on. And subhanAllah, the cab drivers, they all pull over and it's like, listen, buddy, I'll be back. You either come in to pray or you stay here. That's on you. And they just run out the cab and they go into the mosque. So subhanAllah, that affected me. So when I came back to the States, my heart used to yearn at the time for prayer. It's like, where's the call? There's no call. There's no reminder. We get caught up, forget about prayer, forget about that it was time to pray. And unfortunately, that ended up being the case, that we ended up having to stay here. وَقَدْرَ اللَّهُ مَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. Allah does as He wills, and we're always pleased with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I say that Allah didn't send me there to Medina. I believe in my heart that He did not send me there to become educated. But He sent me there to change my life. Because when I went to Medina, I was only about 3 years in, or 2.5 years in as a Muslim, still wishy-washy, but there, praying 5 times a day, seeing that effect of what prayer does for the human being, that affected me greatly. And when I came back, I believe I came back somebody different.